Well, while inflation is a real and pressing problem, the White House is instead focusing on what I think is more of a made-up problem. This week, they tackled ghost guns.
Joining us to discuss is Tom Knighton, a base politics contributor and a writer about Second Amendment issues and a bunch of other stuff. We'll put his Twitter and his Substack in the link to the show. Tom, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we have to start out with this is a segment to try to make it as accessible for normies as possible. What is a ghost gun?
Okay, the 25-cent definition is a ghost gun is a gun that lacks a serial number. That can be, it's generally believed to be one that someone manufactured at home using like a kit or a 3D printer or something like that. But it also includes old guns from older than, I think, 1964. They weren't required to have serial numbers at the time. And they also include guns that have had the serial number obliterated, which is a crime, but it happens, of course, and those are categorized as ghost guns.
Okay, that's helpful because actually somebody asked me this the other day, and I'm pretty into guns, but I still wasn't quite sure what the difference in a ghost gun or like a 3D printed gun might be. So that's a good clarification. But the next question I have is, how big of a problem is this? Is this widespread ghost gun usage going on in the U.S. that I'm just not privy to?
Well, it's very difficult to tell because most of the reports we get are lacking a lot of context. They present a lot, the reports, the ghost guns are a growing threat. And, police have seen a 25% increase over last year, but there's no reference. A report on Illinois considering a ghost gun ban last week actually pegged something that was interesting. It found that since 2016, there were 325 homicides committed with ghost guns. What's interesting about this is that there's more than 400 accidental fatalities with firearms every year.
You can look at the statistics. I remember viewing these statistics for AR-15s and similar semi-automatic rifles where it's like you're more likely to die from strangling of clothes or like in a bathtub, or there's all these crazy statistics. But the main point is, some people might hear that and be like, 300, wow, that's a lot. It's like a tiny decimal point of all homicides and gun homicides.
It's just under 0.36% of homicides since 2016.
But clearly, Tom, that is a pressing danger that the administration must regulate. So talk us through. They just released this new executive order specifically regulating and cracking down on ghost guns, which I think they like that name because it sounds scary. But
yeah, it's a made-up term.
It is. So are a lot of the terms.
They love making up terms around guns around here.
But so let's take this executive order in a few parts. The first part, can you explain us in as simple terms as possible what it does? Okay,
the lion's share of it is about forcing the kit makers to basically act as gun manufacturers. They have to have the licensing required. They will be required to serialize all the kits. And my understanding is they're also requiring it on, like, for a handgun to slide, which is not typically considered part of the receiver. Without those, you can't build a gun. Then you have to go through the background check like you were buying a firearm, and then you get to put together a firearm. And this is also as a way to try to keep people who are building using 3D printers. They're still going to have to go through the slides or through the process to get a slide if they don't already have one. That's the thinking. Understand that the actual order is 345 pages long. I have not had a chance to go through all of it, so this is preliminary. As I dig deeper, I might find out completely wrong on a lot of this stuff. Because, government can't make anything simple.
Right, never. But I want to be clear here. I mean, I'm obviously opposed to any kinds of regulations around guns, but to me, this really feels like chump change. It seems like they're desperate to get a win on something. They can't get anything actually done. I mean, period. They can't get anything actually done, but especially when it comes to gun issues, their guns are extremely popular. They're even more popular during the time of COVID. I think you see a lot going on in the world right now that's causing more and more people to want to ensure they have a right to self-defense and the means to execute it if they need to. And so do you feel like this is just kind of a desperate plea for something to hang their hat on, or do you think there's more to it than that?
I think it is. I think that's really a lot of it, because the gun control base, I've written, I've noticed several stories, I've written several stories different places about how gun control activists were very upset with the Biden administration. He relied heavily on them to win the primary. He relied on them to help him win the general election. Even though gun control wasn't a huge issue during the general election, groups like Everytown and Bloomberg did huge ad buys to advance Biden's agenda outside of firearms. All right, they stepped out of the gun control realm and just started pushing general issues. And so, they want to return on that investment. They don't feel like they've been getting it. And I really think this is an attempt to appease them, especially coming into the midterms when he needs that. Democrats need that money again. And it's not, midterms aren't looking good for them. They need all the help they can get.
I want to ask you about this because you wrote a great article about this for Base Politics, which will be in the show notes. But here's an excerpt from the Monday morning announcement about these new rules. This final rule bans the business of manufacturing the most accessible ghost guns, such as unserialized buy-build shoot kits that individuals can buy online. But you were explaining that this will actually be really easily circumvented, right? Will this actually accomplish anything, or is it just a virtue signal?
It'll accomplish something, but not what they want. What it will accomplish is basically killing hobbyists. There is a segment of the population that likes assembling these kits. They'll buy these kits, put them together. They enjoy the hobby of it. Trying to build a firearm from scratch is a little daunting. With 3D printers, obviously, it's a lot easier to build like a clock clone, which is a polymer base. But, there's a lot of people who do this for fun. They build guns repeatedly just because they like the challenge. They like doing it. It gives them something to do with their hands. It's going to accomplish a lot in making it more difficult for them. As for criminals, no, it's not going to do anything, because we have to remember that the high point of homicide in this country was the late 80s, early 90s, when there were no ghost gun kits. Where'd criminals get their guns?
And to bring it back to the starting point, ghost guns, some of the technology is new, like 3D printing, but people have always assembled their own firearms without a serial number. Yeah. This isn't some new scary threat.
My first assault rifle was an AK pattern rifle built from a kit with a less than 80% steel receiver that I purchased and put together in a friend's backyard. This is before 3D printers were even a thing. And it's been like that for, I wasn't new to this. I wasn't the first person to do this by any stretch. This was a cottage industry that had been going on for several years when I did this, early 2000s. So,
well, Tom, now that you admitted that, I think you need to be added to the no-fly list.
Well, I'm actually surprised I'm not already on there.
Yeah, same. But all right, Tom, we will leave it there for ghost guns and everything today. But guys, check out Tom's Substack. He writes, I subscribe to it. It's really great. He writes about guns, but also all sorts of other stuff. He's also writing for us at Base Politics. We'll put the article to his Ghost Guns article in the link. Check out his stuff. And Tom, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. You're really great.